Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Beyond the Launch, the podcast that explores what really happens after the deal is signed and the product goes live. Because real impact doesn't come from implementation alone. It comes from intentional, strategic customer success. Hosted by Ivan Whitaker, an experienced executive in sales, customer success, and implementations, including complex 911 and public safety implementations. This podcast goes beyond the launch to uncover what truly takes drive, adoption, measurable outcomes, and long-term success.
Welcome to Beyond the Launch from Utah Podcast Studios. There are moments that change everything. For Amir Elichai, it was the night he was robbed on the Tel Aviv beach. He called emergency services only to discover they couldn't verify his location or get to him in time. Standing there in the dark, a decorated IDF Special Forces officer, he asked the question that would reshape an industry. If an Uber driver or a pizza delivery person can find your exact location, why can't 911? That question became Carbyne. Amir Elichai is the founder and CEO of Carbyne, the world's first AI-native cloud-based emergency response platform. What started as a personal reckoning became a decade-long mission to drag emergency communications into the modern era. And the results speak for themselves. Carbyne today reaches more than 250 million people worldwide, serving over 300 government and public organizations across the U.S., Israel, and Latin America. A former officer in the Israel Defense Forces, Special Forces, and Intelligence Corps, Amir brought a wartime mindset to peacetime emergencies because in a crisis, seconds aren't just seconds, they're lives. In 2025, Carbyne was acquired by Axon, the company behind the Taser and police body cameras, marking one of the most significant consolidations in public safety technology history. Amir now leads the charge on what comes next, a fully integrated ecosystem where emergency communications, real-time intelligence, and responder workflows finally operate as one. He has been featured in GovTech, TechCrunch, Urgent Communications, and AWS Public Sector, and has become one of the most compelling voices in the 911 modernization conversation. Today's episode is titled Building the Future of Public Safety with Carbyne Axon, and today Amir joins us to talk about what it actually takes to build transformative technology in one of the highest stakes arenas imaginable. Amir, welcome to Beyond the Launch.
Hey, Ivan, how are you? Good afternoon.
Amir, it is great to have you. We've had many great conversations. You are truly one of the pioneers in the industry.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward for the discussion today.
Yes. So, Amir, we always start off on our podcast with a couple of icebreaker questions to have the audience get to know you a little bit better. And so my first one is, most people don't know that Carbyne was born from a moment that happened to you personally. Take us back to that beach in Tel Aviv. What happened and what was the exact moment you knew something had to change?
Sure. So thanks again for all the listeners and for inviting me for the podcast today. So as you mentioned, every startup company starts from someone recognizing a need somewhere. And I was on the beach in Tel Aviv in 2014, and I was robbed by 3 people. I was in Gordon Beach, and as you can imagine, on the beach in Tel Aviv, streets, there are no real signs, and those 3 people tried to rob me and another person, and unfortunately, it ended up with me giving them money, and they left. Nothing crazy, no fights or something like that. But this was the first time in my life to experience something like that. So you can imagine that I was pretty stressful and all that. And immediately what I did is to call the police. I anticipated that when I'm communicating with the police in the startup nation, they will know who I am, where I am, what is going on. And I will not, need to provide so much information to be able to get the right forces to the right time and immediate response. And this was not what happened. So I had to deliver so much information, including my name, my phone number, my exact location, even though it was very, very hard because it was on the beach. And it's ended up with me just hanging up the phone and kind of saying, never mind, just forget about it. 15 minutes after someone called me and say, hey, we are the responders to this event. We are here. Where are you? And I said, guys, forget about it. And then I remember friends of mine sitting on a bar and thinking to myself, how come that still in the 21st century, you need to provide so much information to first responders in order to get the proper response. This is basically led me to think about, we have to find a solution. Status quo is not an option. And I started to make a research and found out that this problem is much bigger than what I think. And actually, at the time, public safety were operated in a kind of a broken form environment where you have a lot of data in the scene, but this data is not flowing seamlessly from the call taking to the dispatch to the responders in the scene. And I said, we have to do something, and we built Carbyne.
Wow. Yeah, that is an amazing journey. And I'll tell you, I've heard you tell that story before, but every single time it just makes me think about, this was recent. This wasn't that long ago. And so again, we've made leaps and bounds over the past few years. And so 10 years later, speaking of that time frame, Carbyne has reached more than 250 million people worldwide. When you think back to that night on the beach, what does it feel like to know how far that moment has traveled?
So first of all, I think we need to thank those guys that did what they did in order to force me to think about create a new way to communicate, with governments in case of emergency. But put the jokes aside, I'm super thankful for what we've been able to achieve. And it's obviously not only me, it's me and my co-founders and my team that worked so hard in order to bring this idea, recognizing 911 and providing simple things like exact location, real-time video, real-time texting, things that the industry was talking about for so long, and no one really brought it into the right environment. And I think what made Carbyne so unique is, unlike some other platforms in the industry, Carbyne recognized that the biggest pain point in the industry is those integrations, not seamless workflows, all of those kind of over the top, side by side, not fully integrated ecosystems, which might provide you certain, solution to a problem, listing solution to the problem. And what we've recognized when we came to the United States first is this fragmentation of all the different capabilities that call takers actually needs, taking in consideration that at the end of the day, a call taker KPI is time to dispatch. So I have only 20 to 40 seconds to understand what is going on, where it's going on, and to make a decision if I'm opening a ticket in the dispatch, yes or no. So the fact that I have now 12 some additional data, et cetera, it's nice. It's solving a small problem, but it's not the holistic approach. And what Carbyne provided to the table is this Apex platform that consolidated call taking and all the data all in one screen without the need to go and you look at different applications. It was hard. We had to raise tens of millions of dollars just to build the first product that we can bring to market. But we were so eager to solve that problem that we've been able to do it. And I'm so proud of that.
Yeah, that segmentation that you're talking about, Amir, it results in a lot of directors not wanting to move forward with new technology because they don't want the variance and the multiple screens, and the emergency dispatcher experience can be flawed when you're dealing with so many different technologies. And so I've seen Apex firsthand, and I know that you've solved for this. So bravo.
Yeah, thank you.
Your father was an engineer whose work attributed to the design of the Iron Dome guidance system, also known as the Iron Dome brain. And your mother also was instrumental. She was a physiotherapist. That's a remarkable combination under one roof: precision, purpose, and care for human life. Did growing up in that environment plant the seeds for who you became as a builder and entrepreneur?
100%. And I think that you've summarized it in a very nice way. I grew up in a place where, on the one hand, I had my father, which was that the Israeli government could offer to protect ourselves and to provide it to other countries that are trying to protect themselves. If you think about it, Iron Dome is such a unique technology that can target missiles coming to hit us, whether it's in close range, long range. We have also Arrow 1, Arrow 2, Arrow 3. This was my father as well. So think about intercepting missiles side of the atmosphere. So thinking this is unbelievable. And it became so sophisticated. So my father was one of the people that were, building that. So having that and growing next to someone like that, which is super perfectionist and all that. And on the other hand, my mom, she's not only physical therapy, she's physical therapy for people with disabilities only. Mm-hmm. So, all the time when I grew up as a kid, I was always put into the right proportions to life. I could come and say, hey, I want this, I want that, I want this, etc. as a kid. And she will say, you need to be thankful for what you have. Come and meet me. I will show you other kids that, don't have the basics that I'm not talking about like money and all that. I'm talking about they cannot do certain things. And it's kind of put you in the right proportion. Take that afterwards, the service that I had in the army, which also kind of gave me so much different unique capabilities, I think, that helped me to be a good leader for my team at Carbyne. All that, I think, shaped me to be who I am today.
Very good. Now, segue kind of into a question that I wanted to know in listening to your background, your history in the military. How do you think that it shaped your leadership style today?
Wow, this is I think living now in the United States for 7 years and growing with my family here, etc., and seeing my kids going to schools in the United States. I'm always thinking about how meaningful and influential was my army service. I was in the special forces in the Israeli army. In Israel, we are not choosing if we are going to the army or not. It's mandatory. You have to go. The minimum is 3 years. I was an officer, so I did 5 years. And so at the age of 18, right, your entire freedom is being taken from you without anyone asking you if you're willing or not willing to give it up, right? So you cannot communicate over the phone. You cannot do anything that you used to do the day before. Suddenly you wear uniforms. Suddenly you need to listen to orders. Suddenly you have to work under pressure, under crazy timelines for many, many different things. And then I became an officer, and I need to be kind of lead with example to my team that I had and the training course and afterwards in special operations. So you can imagine as a kid at the age of 21, 22, leading a group of between 20 to 40 people, depends on which operation, to a life. And that's it. You need to plan.
Yep.
You need to carefully plan. You need to execute. You need to investigate afterwards what was good, what was not good, where we could be better. And you need to motivate your subordinates to do certain things that can put their life in danger. All of that at the age of 21, 22. So now looking kind of at 20 years, I'm now 40, right? And where I was 20 years ago and what people in the 20th are doing currently in the United States, to think about it, it's crazy. And this is the reality in Israel. This is what we have to do. So it's not something that we choose, specifically. But when you think about it, there are a lot of similarities to be a leader of a business in your kind of, 30s, etc. So things like motivation, leadership, work under pressure, create all of those things. You learn them as part of your service in the army. And I think those benefits served me very well as the leader and Carbyne, together with my other co-founders, which brought us to the success we had.
Yeah, and I'm particularly thankful for your background, because it's that background that I believe that really spawned a world of innovation in the 911 sector. So I think you should be very proud of that background. And so with that, we're going to get into the core of the questions. And the first question that I have for you is, Carbyne has been at the forefront of cloud-native emergency communications. What have you learned about the biggest barriers agencies face when adopting new technology?
So first of all, I think that, the industry changed a lot. From the moment we stepped into the United States for the first time, this was probably 2018. I moved here in 2019, right before COVID. And talking about cloud, talking about moving your data centers and all that to the cloud through internet was unheard of. People look and say, guys, you're crazy. Cloud is internet is cloud. Internet is not stable. Therefore, we will never be able to do anything in the cloud. Then COVID hits and the whole world moved to work from home, besides one industry, which is 911, that served the whole world. And, I remember getting a phone call from New Orleans director at the time, and she's saying Amir, we need a solution that will be able to, the option to touch people remotely, look at their face, understand if they have symptoms and all that. But we cannot get it from our current vendor because they need to send people. And because of COVID restrictions, we cannot do it. Do you have something for us? So yes, sure. And 3 hours after, we gave them a platform to use remotely, right? And we helped to reduce the amount of people that are basically exposing COVID, and it slowly reduced the infection in the specific city. And then we grew up like crazy. And then the need that was after COVID and budgets and the understanding that cloud can be resilient, stable, and provide the benefits that will be serving the communities better. All that led to a great kind of adoption. Having said that, it took time because, 911 is by nature is not early adopters. And because there is risk on the line, a mistake that a 911 call taker dispatcher will do a life or death situation, right? And therefore we had to work hand by hand, invest a lot in customer success, invest a lot in our agencies that work with, and build these references that will rest assured to the rest of the industry that cloud and the capabilities we brought to the table are greater than stay on premise with the current systems they have. And it took time, and it took education, and it took bringing industry leaders like Karima Holmes, that you know very well, the former director of Washington, D.C. as an example, that to bring the sound of the customer to help us to deliver the message to the right directors, and working with people like you, with Melissa from Cobb County, with Jim Lake from Charleston, and other kind of leaders in the space that help us, to build the brand and to build the confidence, for our customers and partners throughout the way. And, we could not do it without them. You can have the best technologies in the world, but at the end of the day, you need people to trust you, to believe in you, and you need to prove yourself. And, the combination of all of those, I think the confidence at Carbyne, at our solutions that eventually help us to be successful.
Amir, you've done a great job tapping into the industry experts. I remember looking at Apex, and I generally have a list of 10, 15 questions that I'm going to ask, and that grows as I see more that the tech does. And you actually had an answer for everything. I was quite surprised, and then was able to show kind of what's in your pipeline. And I was just amazed. Beyond simply deploying software, what separates successful implementations from the ones that struggle to gain traction operationally?
Great question, because I think selling is one thing, making it successful and increase usage is a different thing, right? So a lot of companies, I think, kind of falling in love with the sales process and putting a foot in the door. But the day after, they're kind of taking a step back and not investing enough in the adoption of the tool that they recently sold. Now, there is something in the startup industry, and it's every entrepreneur know that, it's called product market fit. Product market fit means I build something and it's sellable. But not only that it's sellable, if I measure it a year after I sold to an agency, first they're using, second, it's doing what I promised them it will do from a KPI perspective, right? And it's bring the benefits that the agency was sold on. So for example, when we came in and said, hey, we have transcription translation services. This is a feature. We are selling it to the industry. It's not enough to sell it, because if I will come to you, even I will tell you, hey, my friend, in Utah, you have 50 different languages that, for people that are calling into 911. We will be able to reduce the need to use kind of a translation line. So we're going to save you money. We're going to save time on the call, and we're going to, help you to save more lives with that great technology. So we sold it to you. You're saying, great, Amir, this is great. Then we're going to implement the teams to be side by side with your call takers and making sure that when this stressful call is coming in, they know, how to use it. So training is crucial, and they're using it to the best of their needs in order to really get the most out of that technology. So I think it's a combination of training, customer success, and kind of having people side by side from the company working with the agency, and all that together, I think bringing the success to the deployments that we are talking about.
Amir, one of the things I noticed right from the beginning as I started researching Carbyne is your customer success team and the strategy of we're going to listen first and build the implementation around the needs of the customer. I thought that was pretty unique and savvy in that team is really, really listening to try to drive home a great implementation and then have measurements in the post-launch environment that represent success. And it was apparent that you've done a lot of work in the customer success environment. So customer success is a huge part of sustainable technology adoption. How does Carbyne approach long-term partnership and agency engagement after go live?
So the way that we work on the customer success at Carbyne is divided into, I would say, two kind of roles. We have a public safety experts, which used to sit in your seat or in a call taker seat or in a dispatcher seat. So those are not sellers per se. Those are like public safety experts. They part of the industry. They were the one that answered the phone up until a few moments ago, right? So first of all, when we are part of our every kind of a customer success pod, we have a public safety expert that is attached to certain amount of agencies. So when Karima Holmes or Andrea or Dominique are coming and meeting with a customer, they perceived as professionals who worked in the industry for many, many, many years. And now they're coming back together with a tech company, but they are kind of the voice of the customer, the voice of the call taker, the voice of the dispatcher. Together with that, we will bring kind of professional customer success. That those people criterias are people that are kind of an analyst. They will be able to sit down with you and Karima, as an example, listen to the conversation, understand the workflow, and understand the challenges, future products that we're going to bring to the table based on, okay, Ivan, with translation, what's your next biggest pain point? Non-emergency line? Okay, great. Emergency call? Great. What else do you want? More consolidation between call taking, dispatch, and real-time crime center operation? Let's work on that. So we have all the combination between public safety experts that know to ask the right question because they were sitting on the seat a few months ago, and a professional customer success that will be able to talk to the engineering to come back to you a month or two after, say, hey, even based on the conversation we had, this is what we're proposing. What do you think about it? You're going to say yes, no, and based on that, we're going to do more iteration until we bring the next product market fit to the market.
That foresight is critical. A lot of times you have 911 directors, people in my chair that just don't have a lot of time to have that foresight. So someone that's able to look out in the future and partner and say, hey, we'll be that for you. Well, we'll document, we'll assess, and we'll kind of recommend based upon what we're seeing. I think it's just critical in the space, Amir. And so with the recent merger between Carbyne and Axon, how do you see the future of integrated public safety?
First of all, I'm super excited about, Axon 911 and Axon in general, because I think of Axon as the leading public safety company in the world, by far the most kind of innovative in the space. And, when you think about Axon started as a tasers company, right? And then they moved to the body cams, and then they moved into the software for law enforcement, and then they moved into real-time crime center operation. What they were missing is the citizens to 911 engagement. So we started from the citizens, they started with the officers, and kind of we met in the middle. What Axon is doing by, acquiring, Carbyne and Prepared is basically creating the full end-to-end ecosystem called to action to court, right? So from the moment someone pick up the phone, all the way to the dispatch, to the real-time crime center, all the way to the forces in the field, and afterwards to the evidence management and to filing to the court. So Axon is basically created an end-to-end ecosystem, kind of a one of its kind, fully integrated with AI layer that is running on top of everything that will be able to serve agencies at large scale. So I'm super excited about it. And this is basically the theory behind this acquisition. And, if you take Carbyne and Prepare, two great innovators in the space, combine the two. We talked a lot about fragmentations and how many companies are trying to solve different or the same problems. So I think consolidation is the right approach. So now you have a 450 people team, Carbyne and Prepare, with tremendous amount of budgets, problems in this industry. Bring it up that Axon is bringing to the table. All of that end to end is very unique, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant merger. Michael Time, we had him last week on the podcast, and now you, but both brilliant brains with a brilliant staff that you all coming together. I'm excited what the future holds. And so many agencies are balancing modernization efforts with staffing shortages, budget pressure, and legacy infrastructure. What advice would you give leaders trying to move their organizations forward without overwhelming their teams?
Like certain core selections, I think, like to choose the platform they want to work on. What we don't want to happen is what happened 10 years ago. When we came first to the industry, as I mentioned before, the industry was super fragmented, right? You had text to 911 windows, you had mapping windows, you had location windows, you had video windows, you had the call taking, you had the radio console, you had, so many different screens. And the poor call taker or dispatcher had to navigate between all those. Multiple, username and password. Now that you need to create an evidence, you created jobs for people to go and search for records in order to file this information too. So it was super overwhelming. At the end of the day, we can see that happen now as well if we want to choose the platform we want to work with AI. Because you have non-emergency solution, you have QA solutions, you have an emergency call triage platform, and we're going to see more and more even. So if you want to choose the platform that you want to work on and demand those vendors to integrate to your platform, we will end up with the same multiple different screens in the AI era. So my recommendation to those leaders is to think twice before you're making any selection on a vendor. Choose the platform. Platform is not only Axon, obviously. There are more in the industry. And go all the way with this platform and demand those periphery platforms or periphery solutions that are addressing small challenges that the call takers are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and force them to integrate into the one platform that you chose, and end up with overwhelming those call takers and dispatchers, and we will make their lives harder than easier. And obviously, this is not what we want to do.
Yes, Amir, great take. And I would add to it that we also need to be myopically focused on those vendors that are agile, that can move swiftly, versus some that their development cycle takes years. So with that being said, for leaders listening who are hesitant to begin a modernization journey, what's the first step they should take tomorrow?
This is a good question. I think, and it relates to the future of how I see the world kind of playing out. I do think that before you're making any decisions, want to work with, and I know there are some companies that are doing it already in the space. I'm a big believer in pre-making any selections, really understand what you want to achieve. So instead of talking about solutions and technology, let's talk about outcomes and what we are trying to achieve. One of the great things, if I'm comparing the private business life to government, is that in my company at Carbyne, everything is measured. Every person is measured, and every person have KPIs. Those KPIs are not just for the sake of measuring people and saying good or bad. Is at the end of the day, we have a North Star. We want to get somewhere. It can be revenue, it can be adoption, it can be market share, you name it. At the end of the day, all what we are doing needs to get to this North Star. Same thing, I think my advice to leaders will be, leave aside technologies, leave aside what solution you're choosing, what you're trying to solve for. Are you trying to get better time to dispatch? Are you trying to reduce amount of calls to 911? Are you trying to reduce budget? What is your North Star for 2026, 2027? Once you answer that, now let's go back and say, do kind of reverse engineering and understand what solutions will take me at the fastest way to that North Star. So, and sometimes you're meeting with agencies and they're telling you, hey, we don't like this UI, we don't like that, we prefer this, say guys, let's talk about outcome. If I would that cut your response time by 50%, this is good or bad? Everybody will say, of course, it's good. So let's stop talking about technology. Let us solve it for you, but you tell me what you're trying to solve for. So that would be my number one recommendation for directors. Choose the outcome. Let's talk about and not technology. Help you to serve the outcome you're trying to achieve, and not vice versa.
Great, Amir. And then from there, we go and get the technology that can solve. A lot of times we get in front of technology vendors and they're driving us instead of us driving them. And so that partnership goes both ways. So great take. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice on day one of building Carbyne, what would it be, and why does it still matter now?
You're always smarter in post events, but I think specifically for myself at Carbyne at the time, my advice for people that are hearing me, Carbyne is a bit different because we are foreigners. We were not born and raised in the United States. We started a business back in Israel, and we moved here 4 years after we started the business. I moved here personally. And at the beginning, when we built the platform, we built it around what we've learned from the Israeli emergency response agencies, which is very, very different compared to the way 911 operates here in the United States. So my number one advice to myself starting today would be develop to the target market. So if your target market and the biggest market is the United States, you need to be here from the beginning. You need to move here, be close to the customers, work with them, listen to them. Because like the first few years, we were kind of developing technologies that we thought are great for Israel and some other kind of countries that are similar to Israel. So it's a one centralized police department, which is working very, very different compared to the US. So being the target market, listen to the customer as soon as possible. This would save you a lot of time.
Very good. And so, Amir, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know about Carbyne? Maybe anything that's in the pipeline that's coming out new, anything?
No, I'm excited about, the Axon 911 and Axon as a group. I just came back from kind of an intense week of planning for H2 roadmap and kind of a 2027 roadmap. I cannot share much about what is upcoming, but I must say that we are going to change the industry. And I think we are sitting in a very unique moment in life where strong teams are coming together under a very strong community that can provide resources. We are seeing exponential both in new technologies and capabilities with AI, data centers, compute power, and more that are shaping everything that we are doing in our day-to-day, and it will influence the way we are operating public safety as well. I think the future is more connected, more seamless, faster, and I'm, really excited about what the future holds for public safety. We will be able to only with people like you, Ivan, and other leaders in the space. And I can't wait, to get your feedback and the upcoming NINA as an example about what we are going to show there. That will be amazing. And that's it. I'm here, always happy to discuss and learn from people like you. And thanks for having me today.
Amir Elichai of Carbyne, everyone. Just an innovator, a pillar in the space. We're so lucky to have you, Amir, and looking forward to what the future holds. I'm just looking forward to working with you. Thank you.